Here with reaction to all of this, George Washington University law professor, Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley. So they had evidence and direct testimony from the Secret Service driver saying, no, he never tried to commandeer the vehicle or reached over to take over the steering wheel. And they allowed that. They did not make that public. Then we have the issue of apparently they lost a lot of information and interviews that would have been exculpatory. Then we have on record 4 out of 5 people, the other one was General Milley, in the room, confirming to me in interviews that, in fact, Donald Trump, days before January 6th, wanted to bring up the Guard, but the people that would need to ask for it said in writing, in the case of Muriel Bowser, no, and Nancy Pelosi said no. Why was that narrative never told to the American people during their primetime Hollywood production hearings, Professor?
Well, as you know, Sean, there was no alternative narrative presented. There were no alternative witnesses presented. The committee didn't call in people with opposing accounts. They didn't explore other explanations. It was this drumbeat on a single narrative, and it was produced by this ABC producer they brought in to create this package. And the committee could have been so much more. But it's putting aside the fact that the committee really just refused to consider alternatives to its conclusions. You have this troubling argument that, or allegation, that passwords have been withheld, documents are missing. If you remember with this lunging story, the media ran with it. It was on every single network as Trump was portrayed as this truly crazy person lunging at his Secret Service driver, trying to take control over the beast or the presidential limo. That played over and over again. And the committee members knew when people were reporting this that the driver denied it. This is a law enforcement officer who said it just didn't happen. And yet they allowed that false narrative to be played out there, including former Representative Cheney. At no point did she come forward and say, you know what, let's be honest here. The person that would be most directly involved, the driver, denies it. So we didn't hear that. But it's really consistent with what we did not hear throughout the January 6th hearings, which is any alternative narrative.
All right, let me ask you this, because there were others that were ignored also. Even Lester Holt over at NBC News, and a credit to him, reported that, in fact, they had actionable intelligence that there were people that were plotting and planning and scheming January 6th, what happened that day, that they had actionable intelligence, but they failed to act. Now, the Capitol Police Chief initially said, I don't think we'll need the Guard. But in the final days leading up to January 6th, and he wrote about this in his book, and he said it to me in an interview that I've had here and on my radio show, that, in fact, once he saw new intelligence, he was begging for the National Guard, and nobody would give it to him. And isn't one of the worst things that we can conclude out of this sham Hollywood production hearing of Liz Cheney and company, the fact that they never dealt with the question of how do we ever prevent something like this from happening again? They never came up with any solutions, Professor.
Right. I remember when all of us were doing the coverage on that day, one of my first responses before the riot began is I'd never seen the Capitol so thinly protected for a major event like this. It was that obvious. We were showing pictures of just a few bicycle cops behind temporary fences. And it was glaring because just the previous summer, you had a violent riot that caused the president to be removed to a safe room. A very large number of officers were injured. There was arson. There was property damage. And they had to call out the National Guard and put up fencing. So this was an obvious move that was being suggested by the White House. They had literally just gone through this. And the reporting later said that Pelosi felt that the optics were not going to be good. But that's part of what we want to get some answers to as the House works through what was not disclosed during these proceedings.
Yeah, great point. You remember Ray Donovan in the Reagan years, after a long investigation, he's vindicated. Where do I go to get my good name back? Is Donald Trump,
Right.
will the country ever hear all of this? Probably not. I doubt any major network or fake news CNN or MSDNC will ever report any of this. That's pretty sad.